The Mike Pingel Show. I'm Mike Pingel, and as you can tell, we're not talking Charlie's Angels. We're talking Star Wars today.
Yes.
Star Wars, and we have David from Queerty.
Queerty. Entertainment editor of Queerty.com. David Reddish is the full name.
He is from the dark side, and he knows everything about Star Wars.
You're gonna overhype me, man.
Well, no, you do. You know things, but I got questions to ask.
You know, we haven't discussed prior to this interview the fact that every time I've ever played Star Wars Trivial Pursuit, I win on one roll.
On one roll?
As in, I never miss a question, so I just keep going until I'm done.
Oh, so you just play with yourself?
Well, it's gratifying to other people don't like to play with me. Maybe we should move on to the first topic.
Yeah.
Okay.
No wonder you were...
Love live webcamming.
You were alone in the playground.
Nobody wants to have lightsaber practice with me. Okay.
Alright, there you go, folks. Of course, we all know that Solo is opening.
Yes. Solo, a Star Wars story.
It's a story by Ron Howard.
With help, because there was all that unpleasantness with, who was it, Chris Miller and Phil Lord were going to direct the movie and actually did direct it up until like the last week of shooting. They got fired, and Ron Howard was brought in to reshoot the whole movie.
So they shot the movie and then they reshot the whole thing?
They shot...
I didn't know this.
Okay, yes. Oh, you didn't know any of this? Okay, so drama at Skywalker Ranch. Yeah, so the guys who directed the Lego movie, Miller and Lord, shot the whole thing, and I guess there was a lot of tension the entire time because Kathleen Kennedy, chiefly, but all the Lucas and Disney executives were sort of uncomfortable with the dailies they were getting. There were issues with some of the actors where the performances were apparently terrible or just way off character. One of the actors, and I'm not exactly sure who, was complaining about their direction. So essentially they'd shot the entire movie. I think they had 1 to 2 weeks left of shooting. They were fired. Ron Howard was brought in and they reshot the entire movie, and he will have sole director credit, which per DGA rules you have to shoot I think 60% of the movie to get directorial credit.
So basically they have 2 Solo movies.
Well, I mean, they did do some rewrites, and there were certain characters that were added, there were certain characters that were cut. One person that I do know that was upset about it was Larry Kasdan, who wrote Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, and Force Awakens. It's a good thing, incidentally, that he is working on this, because he was chief to developing Han Solo's backstory during the Empire Strikes Back story conferences that took place right after the original movie.
Told you he knew everything.
But before we move on to that, so Ron Howard was brought in, they reshot the whole movie to make it, I think, more in line with the tone of what a Star Wars movie would be. Yeah. Apparently the Lord and Miller footage was very jokey and very slapstick, and the characters didn't read right, the story didn't read right. It just wasn't Star Wars. So they wanted to get it closer to the tone of the other films.
That's good to know, because in the beginning of The Last Starfighter... Why do I say that? That's the second time I said that at...
I think you're gonna get sued.
Oh my god, people... I said that at the cantina the other night. And they're like... I mean, when I said The Last Starfighter, the whole table went like... I'm like... The Last Jedi. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, The Last Jedi.
Very popular cult film, The Last Jedi.
Anyway, so the beginning of that is very comedy-ish.
I mean,
it's very slapstick-ish.
It has the most humor, I think, in a Star Wars opening of any of them. Yeah. The fact that they kind of open with jokes. It's interesting because some of the criticisms for Last Jedi have said that it was too jokey. I think if you go back and you look at the film as a whole, it is not. In fact, it's extremely serious most of the time, which is probably why they opened with jokes.
That's true.
To sort of, lighten the mood before, we're going to get to Luke's having a midlife crisis, and the Resistance is screwed, and everything is awful.
Yeah, that's what happens.
Yeah.
So what do you think... What are your expectations of Solo?
For Solo, well, look, I hate to really sound pessimistic on this, but given the background of the production, and given the fact that it's young Han Solo, and I don't know about you, I don't need to see a young Han Solo. movie because I feel like Han's story has been told.
Plus, he was young in the beginning.
And that's the real, I think, miscalculation that Disney's making is they think Han Solo is the most popular Star Wars character because he's Han Solo. I think a lot of that has to do with Harrison Ford is Han Solo.
That's true.
And I think they're setting themselves up for a lot of disappointment by bringing in Alden Ehrenreich, or however you say his name.
Yeah.
Who's essentially, I think he's a little bit younger than Harrison was when they made New Hope back in '77, but is supposed to be comparable to the same age, and so now you're pitting the new guy, the imposter, against Han in his prime, and I don't see how anything they could do would dial back the disappointment or the resistance to that's not Han Solo because Harrison Ford is Han Solo.
That's true.
This isn't a character like Obi-Wan, where the first time we got to know him, he was old. And so to go back to when he was supposed to be about 18, obviously he had to be played by a different actor, and obviously he's going to be a very different person.
Yeah.
We've seen Han's story. We've seen Han from the time he gets involved in the rebellion. You know, he's a smuggler. We've seen how his character's changed. We've seen, you know, what his life becomes in The Force Awakens, such as it is.
His character is the most changeable. He changed the most, I think, in all of it.
Yeah, he certainly evolves quite a bit from being the scoundrel to the anti-hero to maybe even a real hero. Now, with all that said, to go back to Larry Kasdan, Kasdan was key in developing Han Solo's backstory during the development of The Empire Strikes Back. So, when they were developing what was originally Star Wars 2, it was not Star Wars 5, Star Wars 2, they knew that they needed story for everybody. They knew Luke was going to be off training, and we can talk about who he was training with here in a minute, because it was not Yoda. He was training with another character entirely.
In the movie? Well,
in the early versions of the script. But they were developing this idea of Han knows a famous smuggler, he knows a famous criminal that has information or has something that the rebellion needs, so they go to him to form this alliance. That later was readjusted to be Lando, who is someone he knew from his past, and they apparently had the same mentor, they worked together. It was all kind of vague, depending on, you know, the day of the week. Lando was originally, by the way, supposed to be a clone left over from the Clone Wars.
Oh.
Yes. And so that was part of why Leia was a little bit uneasy around him, because he was a holdover from a planet of the clones, basically. What we saw, you know, Camino in the prequels, that was the idea of where Lando was from. That changed later, in part because Harrison Ford wasn't signed to do Return of the Jedi, and so if he didn't want to come back, Lando was going to take over his role in the story.
Oh, wow.
Which is why he's the one piloting the Millennium Falcon in the end, and which is why he's wearing Han's costume rather conspicuously. It's buttoned all the way up instead of, like, hairy 70s chest. Yes.
Wow.
So, the good news is, all of that is to say, the good news is Larry Kasdan is writing this script. He knows Han Solo better than anybody short of Lucas and Harrison himself. He's a good person to have there. He's, you know, I think the story ideas that they had from the 70s are what are being developed into Woody Harrelson's character, and obviously into young Lando, played by Donald Glover. Where do you want to go from there?
I don't know. Talking about that and these characters, I was just watching A New Hope because it was the other day.
May the 4th.
May the 4th.
Yeah.
And the big thing about that movie that really cringes whenever I watch it is when Obi-Wan comes down and he meets R2-D2 for the first time in this movie.
Yeah.
I don't remember having it. I'm like, really? Because in those other movies.
Well, what he says is, I don't remember ever owning a droid, which Obi-Wan never did own the droid.
I know.
He knows who he is.
It's such a hard thing because in the other movies they were so.
Yeah, I mean, sure, that's part of starting a story at the midway point, kind of thing. And that's also part of the peril of starting a story at a midway point and then going back to write the beginning when you're also writing the end at the same time, and so you're bound to get sort of twisted up in knots, which is why some of the continuity of Star Wars is always been a little questionable, but it gets more questionable over time.
Yes, and I'm like, every time I see that, I'm like, but you know him, but you know, oh, whatever, maybe you just have a brain fart.
Well, he's been in the desert a long time.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
So playing with his lifesaver.
Okay. So with Obi-Wan, that's a good segue. With Obi-Wan, you were asking me who did Luke originally train with
Oh, yes,
in
yes.
Empire Strikes Back. Well, in the very first draft that was written by Lee Brackett, it was the last thing she ever worked on. Now, Lee Brackett wrote Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Very, very famous science fiction screenwriter. It was a very big deal that Lucas asked her to work on Star Wars 2. She was dying of cancer, and so that was like her sort of go-to to like stay positive and keep herself busy. Unfortunately, she did pass away before the script was finished, which is why Kasdan was brought in. But her early draft is called Star Wars 2. It is not called Episode 5. And Luke's goal is to go to the planet Dagobah, the swamp planet, to meet with the spirit of Anakin Skywalker.
Oh.
So he goes to the planet, and Anakin's Force Ghost appears to him and trains him. And explain there's more about who Darth Vader was and the conflict that the two of them ran into. Vader's injuries. That's where it's explicitly stated that I think at one point he fell in lava. Was always kind of the idea, like he fell into a volcano or he fell into a nuclear reactor, depending on the mood Lucas was in. There was some question as to was he going to be this horrible deformed mutant when you took the suit off? Was he going to be really screwed up? But obviously, spoiler alert, with Darth Vader turning out to be Anakin Skywalker, the same person, they had to dial that back because the arc of the original trilogy then became, this is about the redemption of Darth Vader. This is not about the revenge of Luke for the death of his father.
Hence the change of the title of the movie.
Hence the change of the title of the movie, and Lucas wrote Draft 2 himself. This was before Kasdan came on, but after Lee Brackett died. And that's the first time that Darth Vader says, "I am your father," because it was all obvious right there. You have all these characters who are more or less the same kind of character. Obi-Wan and Anakin were kind of the same character, which meant Vader was also kind of. It's like just consolidate all of this and let's give us a big twist. Well, there's your twist, and it's one of the twists, right? And that also enabled them to create Yoda, the character, which was something Lucas wanted from the very beginning. He wanted sort of dwarf, like little people. At one point, Luke was going to be a little like that in an early version of Star Wars.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
There's a lot to dissect in there, I do realize.
So much. Okay, let me ask. I'm dying to ask, what is your least favorite Star Wars character? Go.
Jar Jar Binks.
Really?
Really. Which is sort of everybody's universal go-to answer, though, I mean, I think some of the newer characters are pretty weak.
Like the Borks?
The Porgs, I sleep with a Porg every night, and I think he's marvelous. And I love Porgs. I think they're fantastic.
I called it a pork, didn't I?
No,
Pork. I just wanted Chewbacca to eat him.
Don't be mean.
Well, he did do it.
He killed one. Like, let's
really
not
funny.
lose sight of the fact he actually did kill and roast one.
He had the little feet. That was hysterical.
See, that's why the Porgs are great. Yeah.
And then it's like, yeah, and the fish thing. What about when they milked that thing?
Well, you've wondered where blue milk has come from for the past 40 years. I mean, now you know, space cows.
Space cows on a planet millions of miles and miles, million
Hey,
away.
look, people populate the entire universe, right? I'm just saying.
There must be a huge import on that.
Well, I mean, milk does a body good. I'm allergic to milk, but that's neither here nor there.
I am too.
Oh, well,
That's
that's weird.
That's so weird.
It's crazy.
Who is your favorite character?
Yoda.
Really?
I love Yoda, and it's interesting because I was watching an interview with Frank Oz earlier as we were prepping to do this. By the way...
He was prepping.
Frank, I don't even know what that means.
I wasn't prepping at all.
Oh, okay.
I was decorating people. I was decorating.
That counts as prepping.
I was prepping. I was like, I want that, I want that, I want that, I want that. Oh, and this.
Oh, wow. That's autographed by Anthony Daniels.
Signed Anthony Daniels, yes.
That's awesome.
If we have time, I'll tell you the story how I got that.
Oh, that'd be great.
Okay, go back.
Okay,
Yoda.
Yoda's my favorite character because he symbolizes sort of wisdom and strength and patience and determination. Every positive quality I could rattle off right now. Love and affection and friendship and loyalty. Yoda is just he's everything a good person should be. And Frank Oz, who performs Yoda, who's played him since the beginning in all the different movies, I think is one of the most underrated artists alive. You know, he didn't just do Yoda. He did Fozzie Bear. He did Miss Piggy. He did Grover. He did Bert of Bert and Ernie. He did. I said Grover already. Animal from the Electric Mayhem. You know, like so many iconic characters. Like they are the characters, right? And he's a fantastic director. He did Little Shop of Horrors.
I love that.
Fantastic movie. He did What About Bob? Fantastic comedy. Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. Fantastic comedy. House Sitter with Steve Martin and Goldie Hawn. It's really funny. I loved it as a kid. A very, very varied resume, and obviously just a very intelligent, very cool guy. I've seen his most recent film, which was his first movie in 10 years, by the way. It's called Muppet Guys Talking, and he shot it in his living room, where he got 5 of the original Muppeteers together to talk about being a Muppeteer and what it was like in the beginning and what Jim Henson was like and how they developed their characters, why Disney has not quite gotten the Muppets right yet. We're hoping that they do eventually. You know, just what it was like to be part of all of that. And he does touch on characters like Yoda, just, you know, sort of briefly. Obviously, that's a whole thing he could go into. About Jim Henson, who was the one that recommended Oz for the part. Jim Henson was offered the chance to be Yoda first by George Lucas, and he said no, because he was directing The Great Muppet Caper at the time.
Who knew? And he came back for the latest movie.
And he came back for the latest movie.
Which was one of the best parts of the movie.
Which was my favorite scene of the film, I think.
By far.
And they brought him back old school. That was Frank operating him again as a hand puppet and not as CGI, which he didn't know he would be doing. 80-year-old Frank Oz, by the way, thought he was just going to have to record some lines like he did in the prequels, and they were like, "No, we want you to do the puppet again." He says, "Really?"
Yeah,
okay.
I think the puppets need to be done. I mean, when the sequels used all the CGI,
sure. I mean,
and the R2D2 CGI, it's not the same.
Puppetry's a lost art in many ways. Puppetry in film, anyway, because it's way cheaper and faster and easier to do CGI, which is what everybody does now. Which is sad to think you wouldn't get things like Little Shop of Horrors or Yoda or the Muppets, you know, in this day and age. You would lose the artistry to that. But, you know, the argument that Rian Johnson, who directed Last Jedi, made, and that Frank agreed with, was Lucas never seen CGI Yoda. Like, we are taking this from a certain point in time and a certain, you know, a certain perception of a single character, so it needs to reflect that character's perception. And Luke always saw Puppet Yoda. So it's logical that Yoda, if he's going to manifest in a vision, he would still look like a puppet.
Perfect.
Yes.
I do have a question about the movie, though.
Yeah.
All right. The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
Not the Starfighter. Last Jedi. Who puts the books onto the Millennium Falcon?
Rey does.
Rey does. Okay.
Which, if you go back and you watch that scene, I believe you see the Millennium Falcon taking off and Luke standing on the hilltop watching them fly off, and it cuts to inside. Rey is closing the drawer that you later see the books in.
I have to go back and watch it again.
The Last Jedi, you know, a lot of people thought it had plot holes or like it didn't make sense in places, but I think it's a subtle film. It doesn't beat you over the head with its obviousness.
That's true.
It's something that you get more out of it the more you watch it and see, oh, so-and-so really did that. That makes perfect sense then, you know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Well, then he blows everything, you know, Yoda blows everything up.
Yoda blows everything up.
But then you think
page
maybe
turners,
Yoda...
they were not. Which is my favorite line in the movie, by the way. Page turners, they were not. Well, you know. Right.
All right, so let's, we're going to do a little bit different things. Here's a lunchbox. We're going to open this lunchbox and see what's inside.
Hopefully not your lunch from 1977.
No!
Oh, wow. We've got trading cards.
These are the newer trading cards, but I'm going to try to...
The final duel, as if. Sorry.
I was going to kind of do where was this from, but as I'm going through, they're pretty much, and even I know where these are from.
I mean, they're pretty easy.
They're pretty easy.
Yeah.
What is this?
That's a Wampa from the special edition.
Yeah. What do you think about the special editions? Really quickly.
Well, you know, the weird thing about the special editions, I loved them when they came out for a few reasons. One, it was the first time I had ever, because I'm a certain age. Oh, is this a contrasting?
Yeah, I don't know if we can show it. I'll put
yeah,
it
you
up.
can see the do back here is not here there. That's interesting.
I hated it.
Well, I mean, what I loved about it, and what I think everybody loved and initially accepted the movies, the special editions, as a welcome development in Star Wars, because there hadn't been any Star Wars since 1983 or 1985 if you count the Ewok movies, and who really does, unless maybe you're me. I gave them to you for Christmas one year.
Yes, you did.
Just saying. It was the first time there was more Star Wars, and there was this enormous hunger for Star Wars by the time you got to the mid-90s.
Yeah.
Where people like me had been growing up watching them on video, we'd never seen them in a theater, or were too young to remember, and it was...
I was there in 1977.
Okay, well, you said it, not me.
I was there, people! I saw it! Go ahead.
So, it was the first chance someone like me had to see Star Wars on the big screen. And in the days before DVD, before YouTube, where you could get every deleted scene, alternate take, whatever else, that was the only opportunity we had to see some of these deleted scenes. And it's hard, probably for our viewers to know now, unless they were there, that stuff had become legendary. The deleted scenes for the Star Wars trilogy, everybody buzzed about them, everybody wondered what was in them. Yeah. There was all kinds of conversation about them. Did they, have other plot points, things that were going to pay off in the prequel movies when those finally came, the sequels, whatever else. So it was an opportunity to see those, to see new technology tested, sort of as a dry run for the prequels. It was a sort of whetting of the appetite. I think where people start to kind of hate the special edition was that when the special edition came out, nobody realized this is the last, we're not going to get the theatrical versions ever again.
Yeah, no.
Like they don't exist anymore? What the hell happened? So,
I know.
Yeah, Lucas began pushing them and sort of always continuing to tweak them and add new effects, change things around, which is... It is sort of his prerogative as an artist, but at the same time, the argument that the people who made the despecialized editions, and I guess we should talk about what the despecialized editions are. The people who made the despecialized editions, which remove all of the special edition footage and effects and go back to the theatrical versions, and it's a full restoration that was done by fans to make it, 1080p to get a high def Blu-ray quality transfer of the theatrical versions of the films. Their argument in doing so was that it is cultural vandalism to try and destroy something that made a cultural impact, and you cannot see it as a product of its time.
Yes.
Even if it was flawed, that, it is a cultural touchstone, as a point in history, as an artifact of history. You can't destroy that. It's like painting over the Mona Lisa.
Now, my question with that is the recent Blu-ray or with both the special edition and the original, is the original still changed on those? On those Blu-rays?
I don't think they're on the Blu-rays.
Yeah, they are.
Are they? Then,
maybe, I think so.
Well,
maybe not.
I don't think they're on the
Blu-rays. No, I
Blu-rays.
don't think they are.
There was
You're right, I'm wrong.
There was a DVD version that came out.
The DVD had both.
That had both,
yes.
And...
I'm wrong, people, I'm wrong. I give it up.
It happens. The theatrical versions that were on those were actually Laserdisc transfers, so they were not fully restored. They had digital blurring. There were all kinds of technical things that if you're a dusty old nerd like I am that sits around analyzing Star Wars frame by frame, and there are a lot of us.
Yes, they are.
Things you notice, about why they aren't great. But with the despecialized editions now, which are correctly color timed, which are restored, which are cleaned up, which
where can people get those?
You have to get them on torrent sites, and the only torrent site you have to download them off the internet.
Ooh.
And you have to own the Blu-ray copies first in order for it to be legal.
Blu-ray copies.
If you buy the Blu-ray copies, it is legal for you to have the despecialized edition.
Oh, okay, I have them.
Yes. So that's the important thing, and there are different versions of the despecialized editions as the restoration progressed. Some that are in better shape than others. Some with commentary tracks from Lucas and people like Lawrence Kasdan, from people like Carrie Fisher. May she rest in peace. Yeah, they're fascinating, and they're wonderful to look at, and just breathtaking in places.
All right, I'm gonna have to do that tonight.
Yeah.
What else do I have to do? What? Okay, I'm just gonna have asked a couple questions, and we're gonna wrap this up.
Okay. We barely scratched the surface on this.
I know.
We haven't talked about development of the prequel trilogies.
No.
And what character was supposed to survive that does not. We haven't talked about development of the sequel trilogy.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
you're gonna ask me trivia here?
Trivia, but I do have to mention, did you see the deleted scenes from The Last Jedi?
Yes, I did.
Did you see the hot guy?
Oh, the guy in the bathhouse?
Yeah.
Because a Star Wars bathhouse is what we've all been waiting for 48 years.
The hottest guy in Star Wars got on the cutting room. And they obviously wanted to put that in because they have, you know...
Well, it was a huge creature effect. Like, those puppets... People wonder why they don't do puppets in Star Wars anymore, or they've just now, like, why Lucas didn't want to do them in the prequels. And it's because they're damned expensive.
I know.
They're extremely expensive to build, and to operate, and to work with, because they never work right. And so that drags the shooting day on. You hear stories from people like Frank Oz from Empire Strikes Back, and they're like, it was a nightmare and we were all gonna die.
Well, all I have to say is those things, all the CGI was done for that scene, so I think they wanted that scene in. It's on the special editions or the deleted scenes or whatever.
It's on your copy.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
My friend Eric found it. Thanks, Eric. How tall was Anakin Skywalker?
He was before or after bionic legs.
Before bionic legs.
I think he's supposed to be my height. I think he's 6'2".
No, 2.07 meters.
Okay, 2 meters is about 6 feet. So
there you go. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay, here's another one. What color was the Lumina Undulin's lightsaber blade?
I believe it was green.
Yay! I don't know. Well, we're supposed to turn this thing on.
Oh, you don't need to mess with that.
Oh, I was going to tell me. 1962. 1962. We all know how these things really
Try
work.
harder, you must.
1962. Which weapon did the Stormtrooper take time to set up in an attempt to stop the Millennium Falcon from blasting out of Echo Base?
It's the turret, the armed turret. Oh, is this multiple choice? Well, what am I? Oh wow! I think it was the repeating blaster. I'm gonna say B.
Okay, great. Now, how do I figure this out?
Should you push B? Oh, now it shut off. Oh.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, you're correct. You're correct. Woo!
I know my Star Wars.
So now we're gonna choose one more. This is going wonderfully. This is good TV. 1819.
I think next time when I'm on, we should have a call-in show where people can ask us questions about
You know what?
Star
I think we
Wars.
should do it live.
I think that would be marvelous.
I think we should do our next one live, right after the Solo. We'll go see Solo.
We could do it, and we could both wear our Jedi robes.
How many times a year do the replica shed?
Reptilian Transdosians shed their skins. I'm gonna say twice.
Incorrect.
I don't even know what that is. Like, what the hell is that?
Whoa! Oh! Hole! Hole!
Is that Bosk? Is that what he...
I don't know, but we...
Mm-hmm.
Got it wrong! I think there's a shift in the Force.
Well, there's gonna be a great disturbance here in a minute.
9-3... Oh, we'll do one more, folks. One more. Then we're gonna wrap this up. Because...
While you look up the question, I should add that I've done several essays on Star Wars, which you can read on the interwebs.
Yes, where?
You can Google my name, David Reddish, and Star Wars, and you'll be able to find them. They're on a website called ScreenRant.com. Or on Valorist.com, where you can read my reviews of The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. There's a link to my video essay on The Last Jedi, and to another essay on the backlash to Last Jedi, which, by the way, I think we should take this opportunity to say, was nowhere near as big as it kind of seemed. People didn't really object to Last Jedi, but a very vocal group on the internet wanted it to look like people hated it, and they did all these things to try and sabotage the reviews and like the weird audience scores on junk websites like Rotten Tomatoes, which is a terrible website anyway, don't bother. But yeah, it was a very, very strange thing. But I wrote an essay on the backlash and what it's actually about, and why The Last Jedi is probably, to my mind, the best of all the Star Wars sequels.
Oh, by far.
I think better than Empire, better than...
Although, darn it, when he walked on the ship in the second one, when Han Solo walked on the ship for the first time.
Yeah.
In the newer ones.
In Force Awakens.
Force Awakens. Tears.
Well, that's just nostalgia. I wish they would have given him something to do on the ship.
Did he drive it?
Well, eventually, but then, anyways.
Alright, the last one is 934. Who was the Centaurio representation for the mono?
Mina Tillis. C.
C.
Senator Mina Tillis. Her scenes were deleted from Revenge of the Sith.
You win this.
You can buy me a beer at happy hour.
I don't have no money. Well, anyway, folks, thank you for watching the Mike Pingel Show, the Star Wars edition, part 1, because part 2 is coming. We're gonna do that live. That will be fun.
We should do that live. I'll bring. I'll wear my robes. I'll bring my lightsaber, and
bring that.
We can take your questions to talk about things like the development of the prequels.
Yes.
We could talk about the development of Luke's sister, because I was about to get to that, and you cut me off about her original identity, who she was.
We'll hold it next time.
Next time.
Thanks for watching Mike Pingel Show. You can watch us at themikepingelshow.com, here on my Facebook page. Please leave comments below, like us, share us with all your friends, family, and even those enemies, because you know what? They have to love Star Wars too.
Probably. I'm David Reddish.
I'm Mike Pingel. May the Force be with you.